Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 6/10/2025 meeting of the License and Ordinance Committee. Call the committee to order. Alders present, Charles Myers and David Lorman, both online, and myself. We have a quorum. Charles, you have your hand up already. That was quick.
I have one correction to offer to the minutes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Yeah.
The minutes should reflect that I was absent from our last meeting. They do not. Uh, and I request that they also reflect that it was an excused absence due to my attendance of a funeral.
I
All
can
right.
certainly add that addition to the minutes if that's unnecessary with the ordinance change and everything. Generally, we've in the past indicated who was present, and anyone not listed would not be present, but I can certainly make that addition.
Thank you.
Any other requested changes? All right. With that, I will approve the minutes with the aforementioned attendance correction. Then move on to our officially second agenda item, which is an appeal of a denial of an operator's license.
Do we want to check if there's any comments from any other citizens? I don't
Oh,
see
yes, I'm sorry.
anyone.
Yes.
Sorry, we skipped ahead.
Yep. Sorry, you're right. I did. Comments from citizens present. Yes, please.
Don't see anyone else on the call and nothing else in the chat. Looks like everyone present is related to an agenda item.
Okay. And now we move on to agenda item 2.
Yes.
Okay. Again, appeal of a denial of an operator's license for Shay. I'm going to butcher your name. I apologize. Please correct me when you come on board. Employee of Paul's Neighborhood Bar at 2401 Parmenter Street.
President's last name is Thong Nuam.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, no, appreciate that. So I'll just give a little lead in here, background for the committee and how we got to this point. So this is not for a application for an operator's license at Paul's Neighborhood Bar. Our standard process is it comes to the police department to do a background check. So when we get the application, we noticed some issues with this one. Most notably, the applicant or the application stated no to several questions, including OWI arrest for any disorderly conduct, fighting, any drug-related arrest, resisting arrest. The answers to multiple of those were no. There's a disclaimer on that application that does say that any incorrect answers or dishonest answers are grounds for denial. Based on the background check, the history, including two OWI arrests, one of those was a conviction, and the incomplete application or incomplete or false answers. The police department did recommend the clerk's office deny the application, and that did happen. Mr. Thongnam then indicated to the clerk's office that he wished to appeal, which is what brings it before all of us tonight.
Correct. So from my perspective, when I applied for the license, I had the interpretation that I didn't have to list anything that was new from my previous application because I was approved back in October of 2023 to be a bartender at Long Table Beer Cafe. And so I thought that anything new was all that I had to list and not the things that you stated previously, which was noted. But I did state the fact that I had an open case for an OWI. I was detained on, let me look at the date. I'm sorry. Um, January 23rd of 2023. So that was, and I did put that on under the notes on the second page of the application, but everything else that was listed, I didn't think that I had to list due to my application being approved before, and that's kind of what I interpreted the application to have me require. But I want to make things right. I want to obtain my license. I this is my full-time job. I've never overserved anyone. I've never, been intoxicated on the job. I've taken classes. I've been obedient, been a good citizen within Middleton, and I've lived in Middleton for years and years. So I just want to make things right and figure out the right path.
Mr. Dunham, can you clarify the dates that you were working at Long Table? That information was not shared with me from the clerk's office.
Okay. So I was hired in October of 2023, and I put in my notice in March of 2024, but I was previously approved and had my license there. In fact, I think Miss Madsen might recognize me if I served her a beer. I believe maybe I did. Maybe.
And just to clarify for the committee as well, so in the packet before you, I did a summary kind of that criminal history. I did not share that full packet. It's not clear to me how much information I can share publicly. Not that I don't want to be transparent. I also don't want to share things that aren't meant for public consumption. So I'm happy to answer any questions in the memo. Not trying to hide that, but just trying to walk that line in terms of protecting privacy when we should, and obviously sharing the information
Sure.
you all need to make the decision tonight.
Okay. I appreciate that. Is there anything else I could do, or what would you like me to say, or any other way I can state my case besides what I've told you already?
Any alders have questions? Go ahead.
Tyler, when was the most recent OWI related arrest and conviction?
So it's still going through courts. So on January 23rd, I was parked on Monroe Street at Taberna Tequila Bar, and I moved my car a quarter block before I ordered an Uber because I didn't want to get a parking ticket or get towed. And I definitely should have just left my car there, shouldn't have moved it. But I love tapped someone, and a neighbor um, actually called the police on me as an innocent bystander. Oh, did I lose you? Okay. Um, and it's still going through court, and oh, come on, what's wrong with my okay. Um, so yeah, I was detained and admitted all guilt, but I'm still working with the ADA. I was offered a plea agreement last week and haven't fully accepted it yet. But it's still going through the legal process.
And Mr. Fungham, I'll just ask to refrain until you're called upon it, unless an alder has a specific question for you. But Mr. Myers, I think you were asking about arrest and conviction. So in 2013, that OWI was an arrest and a conviction. The most recent OWI arrest was in 2025. Looking at the application, one of the very first questions just talks about any OWI arrests, and that was where it was listed no. Mr. Fungham is correct, though. In the second page, he did list the prohibited alcohol concentration violation, but did not answer yes to the general OWI, which we interpreted as a bit misleading, even though, yes, it is mentioned in the other page of the packet. And just to provide a couple of details on the incident, it was called in as an OWI-related crash, and there is a blood alcohol result from that second and most recent OWI that is more than 3 times or about 3 times the legal limit. And there was some profane behavior towards officers in the emergency room and during the arrest on the part of Mr. Fungham as well.
Thank you, Tyler.
Any other questions, comments?
Sorry, didn't raise my hand. I guess this question would be for Attorney Fleming.
Yep.
And respect to the summary memo covering state statute that you put together in 2019. And just kind of my review of it, how it talks about offenses that are committed, within a year, and then say the person who's committed offense then is rehabilitated or seen rehabilitated by the courts, then a year after. And then it seems like there is a history where the state has made allowances for the issuance of maybe a license, but where we are still in the 2025 year with an arrest, arrest or conviction, but pending court date. How would we interpret that?
Well, so the existing offense is still only an arrest, although Mr. Thongnoam has indicated that he doesn't dispute the basic facts of what had occurred. But one of the threshold considerations you have to consider is whether the circumstances. It's sometimes certain offenses, if they happen in the ordinary course, you can generally interpret that if you violated that is likely related to the licensed activity. Here, I think one of the things, if you were to rely upon the most recent, I think you've heard the explanation for what occurred, and I think you need to determine whether or not that was really related to, under those circumstances, whether that relates to the licensed activity, or in other words, do these particular circumstances suggest a propensity to do something that is inconsistent with the duties of a bartender. As for the other prior convictions, I mean, we've got two issues with those, and that is the identification and the application, and whether the committee accepts and believes the basic explanation that Mr. Thongnoam may have legitimately believed that there wasn't a reason to cite offenses that existed and presumably were cited. I don't know. They were cited in the previous application, but we don't have that. But if they were cited in the previous application, does the committee essentially believe that to be sort of an understandable mistake, such that you don't wish to hold that against them? I was just looking, and actually, if I could ask a quick question, Mr. Thongnoam, what was
Yes.
your previous application referred to the License and Ordinance Committee, or was that just granted by the police department and the clerk?
It was granted through the city website through the clerk. So I applied, I believe, October 18th of 2023, and I did list those previous offenses on that original application. That's why I thought that my seconds or I didn't have to repeat those same offenses from earlier because it said anything new, was my interpretation.
Okay, I asked that mainly just because I was going to look. We have all our old minutes and stuff, and if you had been
Right.
denied for those offenses and then appealed, we'd see that I could get that online. But and Tyler, I don't know if you have any access to.
The only thing I might have at my fingertips is an internal sheet that we keep, but I cannot access what the clerk keeps on her own record as far as previous licenses. That's all kept on her own accord.
Right. So, aside from that issue, I mean, as I indicated in my memo, I mean, I think, just the sole fact that they're very old, may not necessarily mean that they cannot and should not be considered, although I think from the statutory setup, I think it is awfully difficult to rely upon offenses that are, between, what are we talking about, 12 and 19 years old. Unless you really can see that as part of a continuing course of conduct, which is part of the discretion. But clearly, at one round, accepting Mr. Thongnom's representations as being true, those earlier offenses by themselves were not seen as reason to even give an initial denial of the license. And of course, as I said to you, I mean, technically we are sitting in a position where the even the 2025 is at this point still just a arrest and is not a exempted offense under the statute.
So he's been arrested, but not found guilty or innocent by the court yet.
Correct.
Okay.
It becomes a little bit of a gray area given the testimony that he doesn't necessarily contemplate, but we don't know what the offer is, what ultimately might get entered, and if he were convicted of some other offense, which seems unlikely given the facts as we know it, but we certainly don't know that as we sit here today.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like I said, does create a little bit of a gray area, but the language of the statute does say that to rely upon an arrest at this point is it has to be one of the exempt offenses, of which this is not one. And again, I just think I reiterate, I think you do need to make, if you're going to rely upon that, I think you do need to make some findings regarding the circumstances here and how you feel about what has been explained to you about what had occurred in this particular instance.
One other point of clarification that Charles had raised earlier today, as far as implied consent and that showing guilty, that's not for the overall OWI offense. That's merely pointing out Mr. Thongnom was asked for a blood sample or a breath sample. He refused. The officers wrote a search warrant to get a blood sample. His license was revoked as a part of that refusal, and that's where the blood alcohol result came from that I had mentioned earlier. So just to kind of clarify that showing up as guilty is kind of a tangentially related, but that's not for the actual OWI offense, if that makes sense.
Tyler, for the record, what was the blood alcohol level that was measured?
Make sure I get you the exact number. That was found to be 0.228. Legal limit is 0.08. This was 0.228.
And Tyler, based on your experience and training as a police officer, what sorts of physical impairment might someone experience at that particular blood alcohol concentration?
It's a wide range because alcohol impacts people differently based on body type, size, certainly the amount that you drink. Someone that does not drink very much, that is at a 0.228 might be to the point where they need to be in an emergency room for emergency aid. They may be passed out and unable to function, unable to stand and walk. They may be able to carry on a conversation. They may be combative or not the normal selves. So it really can range. But it is, I've seen people at that blood alcohol level that are in need of hospitalization or medical care as a result of that. I've also seen some that are walking and able to stand completely upright.
Thank you, Tyler.
Oh, shoot.
Looks like Mr. Thungman raised his hand.
I was going to say, go ahead and speak.
Yes. So if we're going to talk about this current incident that is still in the court of law, um, from my perspective, I actually did not resist a field sobriety test. It was the coldest night of the year, and the officer asked me to take one, and I said yes, but we move to a better surface because it was at an angle. So he took me to a parking lot about a half block away, and it was freezing. I was just shivering. So then the Officer Chen, said he had access to the building inside and he could administer it inside. But when he found out that he was locked out of the building and couldn't get me inside to take the field sobriety test, that was when he said I had refused a test, which isn't really the case. So it's still up for debate. But I was taken to the hospital, and what's blood is blood, but I don't know what's gonna happen.
Matt, do you have any guidance as far as, let's say the committee would decide to approve this, and let's say a month or two later, this comes back as a conviction? Is that just up on all of us to kind of figure out or do some research on, understand it happened and bring it back before the committee, or?
That is one possibility. I think if we would do that, I think we'd want to, have a more complete understanding of all of the facts and circumstances surrounding it, but that is certainly an option. Yeah, it would essentially, if we wanted to review the situation, it could be reviewed and come back as a revocation or suspension of a license. If the conviction occurred, and like I said, upon doing that, I would suggest we would obtain all the police reports and so forth, just to make sure that we, have a complete understanding of the facts and circumstances of the case.
Charles, go ahead.
Tyler, you said that you felt the way that this was disclosed on the application was dishonest. Could you elaborate on the material facts you feel omitted and the specific portions of the application that should have been filled out differently uh, if you feel the application was being filled out in the spirit of candor and disclosure?
Most certainly. So the application itself, right at the top, states that an operator license privilege is a privilege. It is not a right. Any false answers or omissions may result in the denial of your application. It also says the city is going to perform a background check to verify the information you provided is complete and accurate. Within the application, it says, have you been arrested for, received a summons to appear in court for, or paid a fine for any of the following? Any underage alcohol violation, any operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated? The applicant answered no. Any alcohol-related violation other than those were listed above. There's a few others in here as well that are not as germane, such as permitting an underage person on licensed premise, not as germane to this issue, I should say, or allowing someone on premise after closing. The applicant also answered no to sale or possession of drugs of any kind. The background proved that otherwise. Fighting, disorderly conduct, assault, or battery. Applicant answered no. Background says otherwise. Resisting arrest or obstructing an officer, applicant answered no. The background says otherwise. Then in the next section that Mr. Thungnam was talking about, it says list all and any convictions, citations, tickets, pending charges not identified in those charges above. And that is where he listed the OWI with a prohibited alcohol concentration, which is pending as of 2025. So based on that slew of answers and the no to all of those, that's what we felt was dishonest or false answer as stated right in the application.
Mr. Thongnam, go ahead.
Can I ask, is there a spot, or am I mistaken as far as the application process stating that previous answers for other applications don't need to be mentioned?
Or previous offenses don't need to be mentioned?
Correct. If they were mentioned on a previous application, I think that's where I was confused.
Okay.
I think it says that at the top.
I don't see that at the top of, I know this is an online application, is that correct?
Correct.
I could go to the city website, but based on the printout of the application, including all that language I just read, there is no section to the effect of any previous approval does not need to be filled. It simply says, the only other line I didn't read earlier, this application must be filled out completely and accurately. All fees are non-refundable.
Okay.
Alder Myers?
Yeah, just for the record, I have the application on the city website up right now. Filling out your application, an operator license is a privilege, not a right, period. Any false answers or omissions may result in the denial of your application, period. The city of Middleton will perform a background check to verify that the information you provided is complete and accurate, period. This application must be filled out completely and accurately. All fees are non-refundable.
Well,
That
no,
is, I believe,
I'm looking at the operator's license form. Well, it's for renewals. And so this isn't though, well,
This wouldn't be a renewal since it's a
it says
different.
renewals, please only list the violations since your last application.
Right. And that's where I was confused.
But is this when you applied? So technically, I believe a renewal is where you have an existing license and it's still valid. You're applying to have it renewed by the time it expires. Although, I mean, that explanation of what renewal means is not in the form.
Right. So from my knowledge, licenses are non-transferable within the city of Middleton. So that's why I went for a renewal. So even if someone bartends at two different locations within Middleton, they have to pay the $60 application fee twice. You get two different licenses based on location. Because my license, in theory, doesn't expire until October of 2025.
Do we in fact require a license for each place a person works?
I don't know that to be the case. I thought that the
that
city,
sounds not right to me.
that also sounds not right to me, but
That's what I was told.
Sure. No, I understand.
Right.
Let me just look and see if it's in our ordinance, but I mean, I typically understood operators licenses to be good anywhere in the city.
I would also point out, I mean, even if an individual were to read that renewals line where it says violation since your last application, there's a specific question about OWI arrest, not just conviction, on there that the applicant did answer no to, and there has been a violation since even that 2023 date of issuance.
Yeah, so the arrest took place prior to the applicants completing the renewal, even if it was interpreted as a renewal.
Correct. It would have, yeah, it would have been since the last application, there would have been a new.
Yep.
Well, right, but we're talking about the 2025 that was
Right.
misidentified as solely a PAC citation, but
The OWI arrest was in June.
This most recent one was January 23rd.
Oh, I'm sorry, January. And the application for, even if it was renewal, was on what date?
but it's after this because I mean
Yep,
it's
that's all I'm saying.
If, for instance, referenced in there, it's just misidentified as a prohibited alcohol concentration arrest solely, and not the OWI aspect of it. But
Yep,
new application is clearly after the arrest because it is
Yep.
referenced in there.
Yep. Okay, right.
It is misidentified, but I mean, it's clear from the timing that happens.
Yep, exactly.
But
Yep. Yeah, so we have
I'm checking this statute. I just don't think that
whether it's a new application or a renewal application, the question is being asked, have there been any of those following offenses, in the past time period? And the applicant did say yes, I guess, on the other page, but either way, having an arrest for an intoxicant, whether it's a renewal or a new application, appears to be in violation of the city's ordinance on issuing a renewal, if that's the time sequence.
our ordinance just says operator or managed license issued granted by application. Operator licenses shall be operative only within the limits of the city.
Okay.
So Matt, if that's the case, and his current license is valid through October of this year, would he then continue to work underneath his current license and then have to reapply in, say, September? Like, are we?
Well, he would apply for a renewal of that license.
Right. So if his license is current, can we deny the current application? He would still be allowed to work under his current license that goes to October 2025, and then would technically have to reapply once that license
Right,
is
apply for a renewal. a literal renewal, not a second
Right.
operator's license, which is,
Right.
yeah. Yeah,
Charles,
so
go
we
ahead.
may be back here under the same circumstances, but we may be back here under the same circumstances with um perhaps more information about this latest offense.
Right, and potentially a court decision regarding that, right? Whether he
That as well.
pleas or is,
Right,
and
yeah.
that gives us a little bit more information as well.
Correct.
And the city, or it's really not a city, is it a city concern then that, well, he currently has a permit to work, of serve alcohol, currently has an arrest violation, but that doesn't seem to suspend what he has. He's permitted to continue to work then. Or is that not even
Right,
an
I mean,
issue
yeah,
of this?
we don't
body?
have any revocation or suspension of an existing operator's license before us. We have this
Okay.
this application.
Do we table the application or deny this application and the applicant simply reapplies?
That would be my preference, is to deny this application, and then once it's closer to the actual renewal date, and maybe we've got more information and a court finding to rely on, then we can reconsider a reapplication from the applicant.
So the grounds for denial would be the incompleteness of the application. And I mean, I would throw in just that there is already an existing operator's license and this one is not necessary.
Yes.
So the real technical term would be the fact that he has a valid existing operator's license, and he withdraw his application.
Well, he could do that as well.
Yeah,
We wanted to offer that opportunity.
mhm.
Or with
Alder Meyer?
really, or withdraw.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, procedurally,
Yeah, procedural.
the application has already been sworn, submitted to the city clerk, investigated, and denied. I would not support allowing a withdrawal at this stage because procedurally it has already been processed.
Yep, you're correct. That's right.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah. Denying the application sounds like it makes more sense.
And
Well, especially, go ahead.
sorry,
Okay.
Matt, because I'm not seeing it in the ordinance, but I'm sure it's there. Could you walk us through the license revocation procedure?
Well, I can provide that to you separately, but this is a little
Yeah,
bit
if you could provide that separately.
beyond the subject, of our meeting here.
No, gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can certainly provide that direction to you.
All right, do we have a motion? Charles?
I move to deny the existing application on the basis of the material omission of an arrest record and its incompleteness in terms of past disclosures.
Lorman will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for the help on that, Tyler and Matt.
All right, moving on to licenses and permits. Renewal applications, including approved changes.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, I'll start over. Apologies. Renewal applications, including approved changes for 2025-26 Class A and Class B intoxicating liquor, Class A and Class B fermented malt beverage, and Class C wine only, Class B winery licenses.
Matt could probably explain the procedure part of this more if there are questions, but essentially this is an annual item that comes before you all every year to reapprove all previous issued licenses. There are a number of them. The clerk did manage to save them on a shared drive that I can pull any individual one up for you tonight if anyone has questions. But I did just note right in the memo in the packet any changes to anything that's already being approved. There was the change of the type of license to BLP seller, so that's that subscription base. And they want to go to a combination, so not only that they can sell liquor, but they can sell beer as well. And then the others are agent changes, a change of name for O'Connell's Liquor to DSPC. And then the following agent changes at Kiva, Walgreens, and Fuji Sushi. All three of those backgrounds came back without any issue or objection from the police department.
Okay.
So yeah, typically, there is basically at this point, if there has not been brought to the committee's attention any particular issues of law violations and things like that, for renewal applications, we don't have much choice but to renew. There is by statute a right to have your license renewed unless you have violated some condition of license or ordinance. And a non-renewal is actually a process that's very similar to a suspension or revocation. You have to provide certain notice. There has to be a hearing. And so that's the reason why I say that if we have not brought to the committee's attention something, or the committee has not brought it to our attention before this, it's awfully difficult procedurally to just yank a license out and non-renew it at this point, especially since the proceedings go. If you don't have a license and it hasn't been approved and published and everything according to process, and you are without a license as of June 30th, every day after that, you may be able to be open depending on the type of establishment. You may not be able to be open if really your entire business is serving alcohol. So it's that's why you have the existing, additional due process rights that go along with it. So I haven't heard anybody say there's any reason to non-renew, but just that's a little bit more background about the renewal process and why this, typically by this point, if we've not raised issues and started doing investigations or looking at issues in a particular premises, that this typically is a pretty perfunctory approval that occurs.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Sure, I'll make that motion then for the renewal of the applicants, including approved changes for 2025-26 Class A and Class B intoxicant liquor, Class A and B fermented malt beverages, and Class C wine only, and Class B winery licenses for the list of businesses as outlined.
Myers, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe items 4 and 5 are the same event. We can take those together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So we have an application for a special event permit by Lupus Foundation of America's Wisconsin chapter. Dawn Thomas Semenko, the contact person for the Walk to End Lupus. And item 5, application for an outdoor amplified sound permit by the same association for band, sound system, and announcements from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on September the 13th.
This is an annual event, and their route is actually exactly the same as it has been last year and in previous years. And no concerns from Parks and Rec, and I know I don't think there's any from the PD side either.
No.
Thank you.
Repeat event, no issues, relatively small event.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Lorman will make that motion to approve the applications, permits for items 4, 5, and 6
Nope,
as,
six-
oh,
six-
sorry,
Yeah,
4 and
6
5
is
as
right.
as presented.
So the motion is 4 and 5.
Yes, sir.
Myers will second. And thank you to the organizers of the Walk to End Lupus Now. It's very important work, and it does make a huge difference in our community.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please note by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, an application for a special event permit by St. Luke's Lutheran Church. Kristen Pavlik, the contact person for Haven's Petting Zoo on June 24th, 2025 at the Middleton Library.
And this one is not typically when we get on an annual basis. It's simply just the fact that they want to have a petting zoo at their Vacation Bible School. They are using the green space that is on the library's lot. And the director there, Jocelyn Sansing, was nice enough to let them know they can use it, but they do need a permit for the petting zoo portion. And that's the part that requires them to have a special event permit. And I think also in the application, they may have mentioned switching a date, but they have confirmed with Haven's petting farm it will be on the 24th.
Okay. No likely concerns from a PD standpoint for this one?
No, I hope they all have a good time.
All right. Charles, you have your hand raised?
Just to be clear, the permit does, if we were to grant it, have provision for any potential damage to the turf caused by the animals. Correct?
They're required to have a certificate of insurance, and that would cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think they even mentioned in their application that if they used a tent, it doesn't even get driven into the ground. So I think we're good.
So technically speaking, who's cleaning up the poop?
Not sure on that one. Hopefully Haven's petting farm.
It's fertilizer.
Yeah.
One way to look at it. All right, do we have a motion?
Myers will move approval of the permit.
Lorman will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On to miscellaneous. Number 7, the discussion on a systematic approach for expertise on city committees.
Was requested to be added in by Alder Myers.
Yes, I wanted to get this conversation started. I expect it will be perhaps a longer one, um, requiring more meetings, but based on the discussion uh, at our last two council meetings, where our colleagues, some felt rather strongly about a rewrite of the qualifications to serve on city committees uh, that was perhaps more comprehensive and consistent across committees. Um, in chapter 2 for the citizen members. And it might be a little bit more complicated and involve committees and considerable time and expense. Or we could look at the boilerplate expertise definition that Matt was, well, we could look at the expertise definition that Matt was able to come up with for the Airport Commission based on past statutory language regarding expert witnesses. And that, I think, would thread the needle for the bulk of our city committees that would benefit from people with knowledge and experience.
Yeah, and um, thanks for getting this on the agenda, bringing it up. The other thing I wanted to do is, as we look at this, give our fellow counselors, a sense of something like this, so we can get real technical and talk about, the language of specific ordinances in each person, but also say the scope of a project like this. So to look at that whole chapter, and I guess probably from your standpoint, Matt, how many hours of would probably be your time um, and L&O committee meeting time do you think it would take for us to look at every single committee and commission where we have, some mention of persons of knowledge and then go through it? Kind of like we did the city rewrite code for our zoning ordinance. Are we going to be able to hammer this out in one meeting?
Probably not. And I would also think before we started changing stuff, we might want to consider getting the input from the various committees. I mean, I would suggest that it's, I mean, if the suggestion by some members of the council is that there should be like a mirroring of language throughout each of these, I'm not really sure that that's workable. I mean, it might through some of these, but for others, for instance, I actually do have, and I meant to circulate this. I had an associate put together a little spreadsheet, so I can circulate that to the members of the committee after this meeting. Like I said, we're not going to decide on how this is going to look tonight. That might be just a helpful, handy thing to look at in the language that we use. But so, for instance, like the Tourism Commission, the language we use is, I think, right out of or directly mirroring of the statute. One shall be a representative of the Wisconsin hotel and motel industry in the city of Middleton. That is, if not the exact statutory language, is the approximation of that statutory language. And we want to keep that because particularly where we have statutory bodies, we, want to make it look like that we are doing exactly what the statute requires. Other types of experience, just may, by the nature of the committee, not necessarily need to be quite as particular. And so I guess what I would suggest we do is maybe first, starting with this little cheat sheet and having the committee have some time to get a handle on kind of the language that we use in other places and kind of figure out, is there any place where we think the language should be different, where there needs to be more expertise is kind of the first threshold question. And then second question is the way we describe the expertise in each committee, good for that committee, or is there value in having some sort of mirroring language? I mean, I don't have any good sense of exactly the policy desire on the other side. I like to have a little more counsel and advice on how to approach this or what I think should happen, but I guess I kind of open this up to the members more because I'm entirely agnostic. I don't immediately see a lot of problem with some of the differing language we use, but it's not my code of ordinances.
Yeah, well, and what I wanted to sort of, point out to my counselors is how much time will this take? One of the charges that we've started more than 2 years ago now was trying to bring some efficiency to our committees and commissions and their organization, try to cut down on workload and be more efficient in our processes. And so if we're making work for the sake of making work, then I want to call that out and point that out. If we're bringing value to the city and efficiency through the operation of the committees and commissions by looking at a project like this, well, then I want to call that out.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to take you very long to look at the spreadsheet we did. It's 4 or 5 pages. You can skim through it pretty quickly, and I think from that should be able to start getting an idea of how many of these things we think we really need to tackle, or you might decide by looking at it you don't think it's a problem. So I mean, I think sort of an initial evaluation of how far you think you want to go with this, or probably is not going to take everyone terribly long.
Okay.
So just while I'm doing this, because everyone's District 5, District 7 and 3, or do I have that right?
2, 5, and 7.
Okay, so I just had what, 2, 5, and 7, not 3, 5, and 7. Okay. I'll email that spreadsheet to you right now. 5, 2, 7.
Great, thank you.
And then, yeah, I suggest we just kind of take a look at that and then put this back on the agenda, and we can discuss based upon each of the committee members' kind of digestion of this initial review. Is this something that we really think is important? It might be only a couple that we feel need to be changed. I mean, there certainly will be some that I think shouldn't. That's not necessarily identified, but like the CDA, I'm pretty sure we're, mirroring statute, plan commission. I already mentioned the tourism commission, some of these like the joint review board, and a few others, there's no expertise, but it's kind of inherent in the position. Like the TID 5 Joint Review Board is the mayor, city administrator, assistant city administrator, finance, those kinds of things. So I think it really will be, it's not all of these committees that you really will have to give much thought to either. So.
Okay. Charles, you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, would we be able to refer this table to our colleagues as a committee report? or just
You
have
could,
you?
I guess I'd suggest that we first look at it as a committee and then maybe refer it out after you've had some time. I don't know if there's much value in just sending it out. Maybe you send it out with some thoughts after you've had a chance to take a look at it. But I mean, you can send it to anyone you want. It's just a summary of what our actual language is.
I think some of them might find it helpful, and since we're in the early stages of this, there is a chance that it just answers the questions, and we hear back in some way from council, from the rest of council, that, oh, never mind. Uh, now that we've read the language and seen why.
Well, possibly, although that's likely only happen if it becomes an agenda item on something else.
Mhm.
That's why I thought, some type of report back from L&O after having looked at it, and particularly if you conclude that these members don't necessarily see there being any real overriding need, particularly when balanced against the effort it might take. Might sort of be a more clear handing off the ball, but it's entirely up to the committee. Yeah, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, we're under no time constraint on this.
But even if L&O decided, I mean, any one of you, if you want to send this out to other members, just make sure. I always encourage, if you send it to more than one member of the council, that remind everybody not to hit reply or start any email discussions. But beyond that, there's nothing preventing you from doing that if you'd like to do that as well.
Yeah, it's probably a better way.
Well, I think, send thank you for sending the spreadsheet out. Let's go ahead and start with that. We'll review it, bring this back to discussion at the next L&O meeting, maybe with some suggestions as to which committees we would want to forward this on to, because frankly, if we're going to consider changing the language, I'd like the input of the committee for whom we are proposing the language change or the expertise change to. But let's at least get the discussion going.
Yeah.
I think that spreadsheet's an excellent place to start.
Yeah, because then at that point, we would then have to think of a standardized language format for each one of those particular ordinances.
You may. I mean, if like I said, it's a two-pronged thing. I mean, one is what is there adequate, and then two is some standardized language really the solution for what you find inadequate about that existing
Yep, correct.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Huh. Thank you for that information. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Any closing thoughts?
Do we do future L&O agenda items at the end of our meetings, or is that just something that comes up post meeting to just submit to the chair?
So in the year previous that I was on the committee, there wasn't a proposal for future agenda items for L&O.
Okay,
but
gotcha. Nope, I'm fine. No, I'm just asking for my own information. Nope, I'm not looking to make new procedures here.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
there is ever something you want added, feel free to just shoot me an email message and I'll add it right up to that last moment that I can.
okay.
So far, we have not experienced problems with people wanting stuff on the agenda and bogging up your agenda and having to really formalize the powers of the chair and everything to do that. If people really go off the rails, maybe we have to do that. But yeah, I think that this committee at least has always traditionally, just if any member really feels that there's something that the committee ought to discuss, you just contact Tyler or his predecessors and get it on the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I guess the most you might get is 3 items. There's 3 of us.
Right, again, any closing comments?
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd just like to thank Tyler and Matt for the work that you did ahead of and during this meeting.
Yep.
Yep, you bet. That's why we're here. I appreciate Matt's help and guidance with the legalese of it as well. It's a little convoluted.
No, indeed. All right, well, it's 7:35 and I'll adjourn the meeting.
Have a good night.